goes in.
Cool. Welcome back, people. This is Calf Kick Sports. We're here with Lewis. We're here with Jermaine. UFC 305 in the bag, full of surprises. And this is our reaction show, review show, whichever floats your boat. So, first things first. Du Plessis first Adesanya. Lewis, I'm gonna go to you. What was your expectation of this fight? And how did it differ in comparison to the result?
It was one of those fights. I thought Israel Adesanya probably would have been able to keep it clean enough on the feet, as long as he stopped the takedowns and stuff like that, to sort of keep a flow on the feet. And I thought it was actually going to be a similar type of fight to his Paulo Costa fight, if I'm honest. Obviously, Du Plessis just continues to sort of surprise you every single fight. And you just don't really know what to expect him because he does everything. It seems like nothing sort of quick and like clean, but he does what he does, makes it work for himself every single time. So I didn't actually fight. It was one of those, I've had enough of doubt in him because DDP, he just continues to prove me wrong. And after the Robert Walker fight, I think you're sort of like, you can't doubt him anymore, even though it's Israel Adesanya. I thought, I think it was going to be a close fight either way, but I didn't think that the way it went, I was shocked about like Adesanya, because I think Adesanya looked well on the feet, and even his takedown defense and getting back to his feet was pretty strong. But DDP overall, it was just, he's so, like, he's just in your face non-stop, and I think he just sort of surprises fighters when he fights them about how quick he can transition to the stand-up, to the grappling, and even though he might look tired, he's just constantly sort of flowing, and he'll always be throwing, and he's obviously still powerful in the later rounds, which he proved. I did think I was surprised about after like the fourth round. I thought it's going to go to decision, and as he might sort of keep going the way he's going, he got in a bit of a flow. But you just can't count him out ever. Even though it was a really close fight and stuff, I thought as he's got to run away with it, and that type of when it got to that late on in the fight. But DDP, man, he just continues to prove everybody wrong. It seems like one of these fights. I don't know who's meant to come up against him. His style just sort of throws people off, I think. But I wasn't surprised by the end of the fight, but I think they were both looked really, really fatigued.
Listen, I was here thinking Robert Whittaker. After the result, I said, Robert Whittaker, if you're a Star Wars fan, people, you'll get this reference. I was thinking Robert Whittaker is our last hope. At the beginning of Star Wars, when Obi-Wan goes to Tatooine, he tries to try to find Luke Skywalker, and is like, listen, that's our last hope. That's how I see Robert Whittaker. I just feel like if he can't do it, then Du Plessis might have the most unexpected long reign in a while. But Jermaine, what was your thoughts on how the result went down and from what you expected it to be?
Man, I was very nervous before this fight started. Like walkouts are happening. I'm doing like deep breaths and like just trying to calm my nerves because I'm a huge Izzy fan, but you just never know what to expect with Du Plessis. But touching on Robert Whittaker going into this fight, he was saying leading into the DDP fight, or even in the DDP fight, he's looking at him like, yo, he's slow, he's sluggish. And he's like, but then all of a sudden he hit me in the face. And it was, you know what I'm saying? Like, so he's like, even in there, it looks sloppy when you're facing him. So it's real tricky. And I was watching the fight again. And like when he's catching Izzy, as Izzy's leaning back and it usually works well, Izzy looks pretty surprised that he's able to hit him at that distance. In the fourth round, Izzy's putting it on Du Plessis. All right. I had it 2-1, like going into the fourth round. And then Izzy starts putting it on Du Plessis. And then all of a sudden, Du Plessis was like, this is my fight.
Wait. Did you have it 2-1 to DDP?
No, 2-1 for Izzy.
Okay, yeah. Likewise,
I had the fight going for Izzy going into the fourth, and then he looked amazing in the fourth, and then all of a sudden he didn't. All of a sudden he looked more tired than anyone, and DDP just found all the energy in the world to not only land those punches, take the back, take him down, lock in the submission. All of a sudden he had this burst of energy to just finish the fight when he looked like he was done in the third. he looked like he was done. But yeah, I don't think anyone can really plan for DDP and his style.
I think with DDP, and I was saying this in the chat, where he's so awkward but committed to what he does, that's why it's scary, because there's a lot of people that, you know, they're awkward or their technique's not the cleanest, and then they'll go up against someone like Izzy and they'll start, you know, second guessing themselves because they're just like, this guy's so masterful. But with DDP, he's just like, I am who I am. I'm a dog, and I'm just gonna commit to being that awkward guy. And I feel like with Izzy, all the counters he was doing against a cleaner fighter, that works. But then when you're facing an awkward fighter like DDP, like you alluded to, Jermaine, there's certain points where he's leaning back, and against a cleaner striker, that punch is not landing against Izzy. But against someone who's like got the most awkward technique ever, I remember, I think it was before I think there was a left hook before the sequence that he got finished. I think it was a left hook that landed. I remember that rocked him. And I think Izzy put on a good poker face and he made it look like, oh no, I'm fine. But that's just using strike in the game.
Yeah.
And then looking back, I'm just like, no, that is the one that just had him.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurt me because I remember thinking to myself, he got clocked with that punch a few times during that fight. So I'm just thinking to myself, Izzy, like, learn to not stop leaning back, basically. Stop leaning back.
Circle out of there.
Circle. Like, but it's hard. How do you tell someone that's got so much success with that style to all of a sudden, abandon it? Like, it's hard. But
I think it's crazy because he's like, as you say, he's had so much success in doing what he does and how he does it. But I think du Plessis is that unorthodox, and he's just surprises people. It seems like when they get in there with him, they're sort of surprised themselves because how unorthodox he is. He does certain things, and then they're not used to, like, they're so used to like clean fighters that are striking this way or wrestling this way. But it's like du Plessis just like, I'm going to beat you. I don't care if it's a fight or a grappling. Like, I don't care how it goes. But even like the ending, like how quick it was to change, like for striking, knew he had him hurt and just jumps on it. Yeah, he's really quick at taking the back as well.
It wasn't even clean jiu-jitsu. He just like literally just went in there, just basically just bear hugged him and just said, wherever sinks it will get it done.
He just manhandled him. There's no real technique in there. There's no technique. He just does it.
It was similar as like even the way he takes fighters down in that, like with the Darren Till fight. Obviously, people can say what they want about Darren Till's takedown defense and whatnot, and his knees and stuff that might not be very good and whatever. He's injured constantly, but going into fights. But like every fight DTP fights, it's like he does things, and it's like even like his takedowns. It doesn't look like it's more technique. It's more just
runs
like
at you.
Runs at you. He's so confident in what he does, and he makes it work for you. And I think now everybody's got to realize, right, this guy, it might not be something we've really necessarily seen before, and his techniques and his style, but what he does makes it work. Like, you don't beat the fighters he's beat, and the way he's beat them.
Oh yeah, now any criticism, it just has to, even if you say he's this, he's that, the guy knows how to win. And sometimes just the most important thing is he going to be the best in one area? No. Does he know how to win? Absolutely. And I think one of you guys alluded to it earlier, is when he beat Robert Whittaker is when I realized, like, that was the one where I was just like, oh, wow. And to do it to someone like Robert Whittaker as well, who I feel like, if we'll go into this discussion after, but because obviously it's presumed that Sean Strickland will be the next guy to fight.
Yeah, I think so.
DDP. My presumption is Sean Strickland might have the style to beat him only because he's disciplined enough not to engage DDP in a way that, like, Izzy was getting in with the body shots, which I thought was money. Sometimes I got annoyed with Izzy by not using the body shots enough, because I was like, that's money right there. He's banking a lot of shots. But then, obviously, like we were saying, the stuff with the leaning back and everything. And despite this guy losing his last fight, how I feel like the best way to beat DDP might be the same way that Leon fought Colby, where it's just like, as much as people may not be a fan of it, you just have to be disciplined, have used the most simplest of techniques. Do not go in there and engage with him. Use that jab, use good defensive wrestling, and it's going to be a ball fest. And I feel like that's where Sean Strickland might be the guy to implement that, because that's how the last fight went, basically, except for he just needs to be more aggressive. So I'll send it to you, Jermaine. Who do you think will be next, and how do you think that fight goes?
Well, next for DDP would definitely be Strickland. But I even with that, I like Strickland could have won the first fight. I feel like he just allowed DDP to stay in there because his lack of volume. You know, if he just extended those combinations, he would have dominated DDP. And that's how I felt when I was watching that fight. But I don't feel like Robert Whittaker's, like, just the way he was dominated in that first fight. I don't know if he's gonna come back and somehow put up a better showing against DDP because he's just so awkward. And then with Khamzat, he's not active enough. And when we've seen the cardio issues with Khamzat, imagine a 5-round fight with DDP. I don't think that goes too good for Khamzat. I'd say DDP could probably reign for a while, man. I'd have to like really look at the division. Like, I don't know, man. Like, Anthony Hernandez is tough, like, but you know, it'll take somebody like super tough.
Imagine if Anthony Hernandez, out of all people, is the guy to the DDP. That is crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. What I would want to know, like, is who does Izzy fight next?
Oh, we'll get onto that in a bit. We'll get into that in a bit. That's a good follow-up. But yeah, Lewis, what about yourself? Who do you think is next, and how do you think they'll fare against DDP?
I do think it will probably most likely be Sean Strickland. I think it's got to go similar to the first fight, obviously. But the thing is with Sean, the way he fights, it does sort of cluster people a bit as well. So the thing is, if he does fight as similar, a bit more aggressive than he might have in the first fight, it opens himself up a bit more, which is a bit risky, especially against DDP, because it's the way he blitzes fighters. I think it takes him by surprise. But the thing is as well, with Strickland being in with him before, I don't know if that might be the sort of thing, because he understands, and now because he's such an awkward fighter and his DDP's not had to like rematch anybody in the UFC or whatnot, and Strickland now has a better idea. He's seen him fighting Izzy, obviously, and he might have a bit better knowledge to go into the fight and go, right, what he does make him work. It works for him, whether it looks great or looks pretty or not, it makes it work. And it's just a case of trying to combat that, even though they've done it in the first fight. And it was a really close fight, and a lot of people do think Strickland won. I still don't know if it's enough to risk doing it again for a second time, him possibly losing the same weight, which might make him open up and be a bit more aggressive. But with him being a bit more aggressive, it might end up doing the opposite effect of the first fight, and he could get caught. But I do think that I think it will be another very similar to the first fight, because I don't think Strickland will open up too much. It's strange with Sean Strickland because he seems to be more aggressive in the gym than what he does in his fighting, in his actual proper fights. But end of the day, similar to what he said about DDP, what he does works for him, and that forward pressure and stuff like that, it seems to work for him. I'm more excited for the rematch than what it would have been for the first fight. It's a weird thing. I was actually thinking about this yesterday after the fight. I was like, who would I put up against DDP after like that type of performance? And I think it's someone that might not have the style to beat a lot of the other fighters in the division. But I think it's got to take someone with like another similar type of fighter with a lot of punching power, because you can see when he comes into that pocket, you need to catch him.
Yeah.
Because getting out of the way, he seems to, like, even with Adesanya, like, he just seemed to catch him and keep following him in. So I don't know if it's got to take like some power puncher to catch
it. Jared Cannonier.
Oh,
I think Cannonier could be like his kryptonite, like, because he's not going to back off him either.
That is because I was gonna go harken back to what you said about Anthony Hernandez, but obviously he's a bit lower in the division. But Cannonier, I know Dana must be sick right now, because this ain't like the the big names to be coming up against Du Plessis. So Dana's probably thinking, I swear, if Cannonier wins the title, he's gonna feel sick because it's just like, yeah, it's not the biggest names by now, but we'll see. But you guys alluded to earlier on, and I believe Jermaine alluded to earlier on about what Izzy goes to next. So Jermaine, what are your thoughts on where does Izzy go next, and who do you think his ideal opponent should be next?
Well, they asked him if he would go to 205, and he said no. He said the rest of his
Thankfully,
career, the rest of
please,
his career will be.
people realize. Sorry, I'll let you carry on. The people that keep on saying Izzy needs to go after Pereira, Izzy is not big enough to. Yes, he knocked out Pereira. However, at 205, even at 185, Izzy doesn't have the knockout power to get everyone. He's more of a counter puncher. I don't think that style is going to work well for him at 205, especially a 205 Pereira. So please, people, let's stop with the Pereira 205. But say, go on, Jermaine.
Okay, so yeah, he said no X-Nay on the going to 205, and I think that's a great idea. I think he should fight like the winner of maybe Imavov Allen when they fight in Paris. I think the winner of that should fight Adesanya for at this point, is he a gatekeeper? I don't know if he's not one fight away from a title fight, because he lost. He was submitted. I feel like he needs to win a couple at least. So right now he's kind of in the gatekeeper status of if you can beat Adesanya, then you can fight DDP.
I think how the next fight goes gives him gatekeeper status. I think now he's just a fallen contender.
Yeah.
If the next fight doesn't go the way it needs to, then there's an uncomfortable conversation of, and I believe the worst thing is his fighting style anyway is so one-dimensional that there's not too much areas to really change up for him to be different. So we'll see. But Lewis, how about yourself? Who do you think you should fight next?
Well, actually, I seen something on, I think it was Twitter or whatnot, or X as they call it now. But although they have the same manager and a lot of people was pushing back against it, Jiro Prohaska was talking about moving down to middleweight.
Oh.
And I would like to see that fight, but a lot of people were talking about they've got the same manager. And
that's not happening.
So I don't think that's a possibility. But if I could pick, it's a fight I would like to see, but I think he would put the pressure on Izzy instantly, and I don't know how that would go. But other than that, at middleweight, it's one of these, because he's had so many title defenses and he's that much a superstar, you sort of need that big fight for him, I think. It needs to be, I don't think you can just sort of throw him in with a smaller name that might be on the rising up or whatever. I don't think he would even take that. I think he wants and needs a decent name at least, if not a big name. Yeah. But the problem is,
I'll go through the rankings now because this is where it gets difficult for Izzy.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So obviously, DDP champion Sean Strickland number 1, number 2 Izzy, 3 Whitaker who's beaten twice, 4 Imavov. So that's one of you guys mentioned, Imavov. So he's facing Allen next. So I think that actually that might be the one. So if Imavov or Allen win next, that'll be a good one for Izzy. Number 5 is Cannonier, who's already beat. Number 6 is Vettori, who he's beaten twice. 7 is Allen. 8 is Paulo Costa, who he's beaten. And after Costa is Hermanson and 10 and lower, but there's no reason that Izzy should be going any lower than that.
No.
So,
as an Izzy fan, I would love to see him fight Chris Curtis next. Let's do it.
Oh my, that is the most random. Chris Curtis is 15 right now. And funny enough, above Chris Curtis is Anthony Hernandez, who we mentioned earlier, who's a crazy enigma in himself. So let's see. I think the most important thing right now in the middleweight division is obviously Sean Strickland's most likely getting the title, but then we've got Hamzat versus Whitaker next. And Ash will tell you, I've been saying this about Hamzat for a long time. I feel like that chain is fugazi. I don't know how, against top competition, Hamzat's not really shone the way that they were shoving him down our throats that he was the next best thing. I'm not saying he ain't got it in him. I'm just saying we started giving him accolades before he earned them. So
we crowned him a 2-division champion right away.
Which was crazy. Because I after the Gilbert Burns fight, I remember I was just like, Gilbert Burns exposed the side that if you do that against other top guys, former welterweight, and even against Kamaru Usman as well, and Usman even said it himself, like he didn't put on the gas when he needed to, but he was coming off like less than a week turnaround. So
yeah, exactly.
But 305, we'll go down the card. Kai Kara Francis knocks out Steve Erceg, which I'll be honest, going into this fight, I didn't know where this was going to go. It was obviously Steve had put on a good fight in his last, the most random title shot in title shot history.
Yeah, definitely.
But we got that coming up with Roundtree versus Pereira.
Oh, we'll get on that's listen, man. Shout out Roundtree. I like Roundtree.
I like him too as well. I'm glad. Before we know what to get in it too much just now, but could you imagine? Can you imagine Dana White's face if Roundtree was to knock out Pereira?
Roundtree does it. Listen, do you know who's going to be more pissed off? Uncle Live, because they're going to do the rematch for that, and Uncle Live is going to have to wait another. Whatever Uncle Live said at the end of that fight with Blachowicz, he must be regretting it because they have been treating him like a pariah since.
He's just not getting his shot at all.
I'm not the biggest fan of how he carries himself. I feel like he acts like a meathead, but now it's getting to the point where it's out of order what's going with Uncle Live. But that's neither here or there. But Kai Kara Francis for Steve Erceg. Like I said, I didn't have any expectations for this fight because the flyweight division is in another weird loop where it's like you got the champion and no clear contenders. So I'll go to you, Lewis. What was your thoughts on Kai Kara Francis and Steve Erceg? Erceg, am I saying it right? Erceg, apologies, Mr. Erceg.
I thought it was the way it planned out. I was not expecting it to be so over. I thought we could have been like one of these went the distance or something like that. Especially, I know he had the close fight with Pantoja and that in his last fight, but Kai Kara France seems to be that one of the fighters when he's on, he's proper on, and I think he just sort of caught Erceg off guard and he was on it for the first minute, the first second. Because he threw the same combination that finished him, I think it was 2 or 3 times before he actually caught him. And then the way he finished him and stuff like that. I do feel bad on Erceg because in his hometown and that, obviously. And the way it went, I don't think that's a fair assessment of how they both fight and how well they both are. I think it's one of the fights, he got caught a couple of times and it just styles make fights. And Kai Kara France just seemed to be like he caught him a couple of times in the same sort of transition and that, but I think it's one of those fights. It is what it is, but I think Kai Kara France has to get a title shot next.
I think this might be the best thing for Steve, only because he was thrusted into that title shot and he done so well. I believe that the development stage that he was on just got fast tracked in a way that now I feel like just let him reset, let him go back to fighting lower guys, building himself up, and then going again at the top contenders. But yeah, Jermaine, have you got any further comments on that fight and the future of the flyweight division?
I mean, I definitely favored Erceg going into that fight. I thought he was gonna. Yeah. I didn't know if I thought he was gonna finish Kai, but I thought he was gonna be better. But I mean, looking back, hindsight, Kai has the experience on his side. Like he's fought like better competition. Like he had everything going for him heading into this fight. And maybe the hype of Erceg just got to me in this one. We should have known what would probably happen.
Listen, we're all prisoners of the moment at times, and it's not like he didn't put in a great performance against Pantoja. And in all honesty, if it wasn't for his own mistake, he may have won that fight.
Oh yeah. So
it's a weird one because my main guy at flyweight, who I thought was the real one that was going to save the division, and I think he was on the road to stardom, and then Pantoja came up. Brandon Moreno, who's basically another one who's beaten literally everyone else in that division and faced everyone how many times, but I know he's on basically a bit of a hiatus to see, I guess, to get his spark back for MMA. I think he's like, understandably, you fought a guy 4 times, fought Pantoja 3 times. He's probably just had fatigue of like
Constant
this ain't it.
fight
Yeah,
camps.
yeah, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. I believe Kai Kara France right now is 4th in the division, with Amir Albazi ahead of him in 3, Mr. Moreno at 2, and Royval at 1. So, like you guys mentioned, Kai might be next for the title shot. Albazi, if I recall, I don't know too much about him, but from what I recall, he had a fight lined up and then it got cancelled.
Yeah, he won a controversial decision over Kai Kara France. Also,
Yeah, that's what I was also going to mention as well. So his last victory is actually Kai Kara France, but he hasn't been active since 2023. So yeah, Kai just might be the guy to leapfrog
Something
him.
more on Albazi. Did you see the Mohammed Makayev? What
No.
he says about? I'm sure it was Albazi. He was meaning it. He says that they had a bit of running, and Albazi put a gun on him.
what?
Did you know? I seen it. I was like,
No, I didn't hear that at all.
I was like, what? Like they were
What?
apparently they had a bit of beef, and then they were sort of they were like they were going to fight, and apparently Albazi put the gun on him.
Makayev is starting to make more sense more and more why the UFC were just like, do you know what?
But Albazi pulled the gun out, right?
No, but
I know he's pulled the gun on him, but
how many times are you gonna have run-in with guys outside of
constantly? Every fight, it's not just the thing. It's not just even fighters that he's due to scheduled to fight. It seems to be everybody. It seems to be,
and that was the rumor that he pissed off UFC staff as well. It wasn't just a thing of how you conduct yourself outside. It's like, if you're gonna cause so much trouble for the UFC, you better be a name. So the fact that you're causing trouble, you're having boring fights, and you're not, as you know, the estimate that you give for yourself isn't as big as it is in reality. It's not a good look. But we proceed. The next fight, Dan Hooker versus Mateusz Gamrot. Jermaine, talk to me. What was your impressions of this fight?
I think if I'm Gamrot and I'm known to be a bit chinny, getting dropped in all my fights, I'm gonna wrestle, and choose to not stand with Dan Hooker. That's what I think I would do. But you know, if you want to have an exciting fight, you're gonna play that game. And I'm happy for Dan Hooker. You know what I'm saying? It moves him up to the top 5. And yeah, I hope he gets that fight with Charlie Olives. You know what I'm saying? A long time in the making. No, he's not gonna win, but
someone else mentioned. I've seen some other possibilities. Is Charlie Olives, which I like Hooker, man. I don't want him to take that fight. There's Charlie Olives, or then there's Justin Gaethje, which I liked as well for him, especially Justin Gaethje, where he is now. He's not he's got more wear on the tires. Still dangerous, but more wear on the tires is a winnable and it's a big name. Or the third one is potentially if Max Holloway loses to Ilia Topuria, Dan Hooker versus Max Holloway, BMF. I believe for the hardcores, Dan Hooker is in the BMF category, but I don't know does he need one more win in, let's say, general public's eyes to qualify for the BMF?
I think the first fight with Poirier kind of solidified him as a BMF. I think like retirement fight for Poirier with like 5 rounds. I think that would be pretty cool.
Against that, listen, don't Poirier's beating him again. Listen, man.
But let's be real here, right? So where's the ceiling for Dan Hooker? What he's gonna beat Islam Makhachev? All right, let's cash in on the biggest fight.
That's what I'm saying. The BMF route for Dan Hooker, that's the route now. Just go in there, just be known as the guy that has scraps with other guys that have scraps. So, like I said, Justin Gaethje was a good name. Poirier, I think if Dan Hooker was to get the BMF title, then Poirier would have faced him. But I think because Poirier's already got a win, Poirier's in that weird space where it's like you've beaten everyone in the division but
Aye.
the title holders, and you just happen to face 3 of the best lightweights ever in Charlie Olives, Islam, and Habib. And even I always say this all the time, even without the belt, for me, in the strongest division in the UFC, I still have Dustin Poirier top 5 above other title holders because his resume is just that good. But
Fought everybody.
he's fought everyone, got impressive wins over a lot of people. So it will be interesting to see where he goes next. But we digress. With Dan Hooker, any more additional comments, Lewis, in regards to Gamrot and Hooker?
Well, here's one for you, and I sort of call for it. Hooker to try to hop Chandler if McGregor ever is going to come and
I
just
hope so.
could you imagine Hooker goes full in?
Chandler.
Then the corner knows that Hooker isn't going to try to shoot on him or anything like that. He knows he's got to have a stand-up war. And it seems like McGregor is the type of guy that if he missed, because at this point I'm like, you're doubting it, is it going to happen? Hopefully, obviously, but
McGregor's not coming back.
Imagine Chandler, or even at that sort of, it's one of the Hooker Holloway would take my money, but Hooker it's no fought Gaethje either. So it's another sort of. I think Hooker's got a lot of options, especially after winning that.
Yeah.
But he's, as they say, like because the way the lightweight division is now, if Islam's got to be injured for as long as they're saying it, 8 months, 9 months possibly, then if I'm Hooker, you know you're not going to get it, but there's no harm in absolutely shouting for the rooftops. I've just beat Gamrot. I want to interim belt versus Sarukian. Yeah, like
he said he hates Armin and he's not going to fight.
He hates him. I don't know where that was game for, but
I get Armin. No, Armin rubs people the wrong way.
Everyone hates him.
Yeah.
No, because I've tried to like Armin, and I think he's the biggest threat to Islam.
Definitely, I'd say so.
Some comments that Armin is he's a meathead. He's another one. He's a meathead, a very talented meathead, but he's a meathead. So it's like he's in the same cloth as like Ankalaev, Marvin Vettori as well as another one where it's just like you want to like them because of how they fight, but they're just meatheads. But I believe, do you know what? Chandler versus Hooker.
Again?
I would love, do you know, this is my Chandler hate coming in. I would love for Hooker to go in there, beat Chandler, and take away that McGregor fight from. Not even take away that McGregor fight. Just put a bit more stain on Chandler. I despise Chandler, and if Hooker could actually get that fight back.
He looked so scared in the first fight, though.
I think.
Yeah. I do think Hooker's got through a transformation that he's rejuvenated again. But sorry, go on, Lewis.
I think because even with the first fight, there's a lot of buzz about Chandler as well. And I don't, even though I had all these kind of wars in Bellator and that, I don't think anyone could have prepared the style that Chandler was going to fight in the UFC, where he's just coming in for a war, and it's like he's happy to take a loss. Not happy, obviously, but he would rather take a loss in an exciting fight and be that guy than what it would be, because his wrestling, there's a lot of guys he's fought that he maybe could have stuck to the wrestling, stayed on them, cleaned in the striking a wee bit, but concentrating on the takedowns and stuff. And he maybe could have beat a few of the guys he's lost to, or even been a bit more competitive, or give him something else to think about. But I think he's fully pledged into that guy now. He wants to be the exciting fighter, and he's probably getting a lot of backhander payments for Dana as well for this type of fight he's in.
That bootlicker, I know that bootlicker is getting all sorts of bonuses from the UFC. He's got the infamous Tony Ferguson. What Tony Ferguson say? Dana White privilege. Chandler